Hello and welcome to COM 2010, Communication and Organisational Culture. So let's begin our first module presentation by taking a look at the basics and exploring exactly what is encompassed by the term communication. Our agenda for this presentation is the 3 definitional themes of communication, the 2 levels of communication, forms of communication, and finally, personality and communication. The joke among communication professors is there's as many definitions of communication as there are textbooks, but most of us would agree that there are 3 basic definitional themes revolving around the transfer of information, creating shared meanings, and that communication is a transactional process. Let's explore these 3 definitional themes further and then come to a definition that encompasses ideas from each of these. The first definitional theme, that of information transfer, essentially defines communication as the process whereby a sender encodes a thought or idea and sends it through verbal or non-verbal means to a receiver who hopefully understands exactly what the sender meant. So basically, the belief is that the encoder transforms ideas and feelings into words, sounds and actions through a channel to the decoder. When the decoder receives the message, he or she transforms the messages back into ideas and feelings and digests them. However, it's understood that noise or stimuli could get in the way of the transfer and reception of messages. Noise can take many shapes and forms. It can include actual physical noise, things like a plane going overhead, or alternatively, the physical distance between the encoder and decoder, or seating arrangements. It could be the time of day, or even the technology used in mediated communication. I'm sure you can think of lots of physical and environmental factors that may affect the transmission and reception of a message. Another kind of noise or interference between a sender and receiver may include the social or historical context, power imbalances, a history of inattention for one of the participants, a lack of trust in the sender. These may all interfere with the decoding process. A different form of interference or noise that prevents, inhibits or negatively affects communication may be inter- or intracultural. Differences in beliefs, values, attitudes, meanings, social hierarchies, religion, notions of time may negatively affect the way the decoder interprets the message. The interesting thing is that these images create noise for me, and it would affect both my relationship with and reception of messages all the men may send in future communication episodes. However, you may not interpret the actions of these men as negative, as you may share the values that underpin these communication episodes, and it may predispose you to receive future messages from them favourably. So what may be cultural or value-oriented noise for some people may not be for others. We'll go into this more when we explore notions of culture in more depth later in different modules. Another kind of noise is psychological. This may include the current moods and feelings that a sender or receiver brings to the encounter. Under times of stress, we may not encode or decode messages as effectively as we do when we're not so frazzled. I'm sure the law students in the picture were not communicating at their best as they carted Professor Sam Keating's body off into the woods to incinerate him. Another form is psychological noise. This includes your reaction to different personality types. Introverts may shut down when there's a loud extrovert and a lot of people about. People who are highly organised may not have the patience to listen to someone who is late, has a disorganised office, or transacts disorganisation through communication in some way or another. The self-awareness inventory is designed to identify your personality type. As you do this and read about your type, I think you'll see how personality may affect the encoding and decoding process. Oh, by the way, this office belonged to Einstein. Incidentally, the photo was taken the day he died. Okay, let's change gears a bit and look at the second definitional theme of communication, that of a process of creating shared meaning. It is generally accepted that effective communication involves the successful transfer of meaning from an encoder to a decoder. Communication involves the manipulation of symbols. In this picture, we see eye contact, touch, smiling, and the offer and reception of a red rose. All these things are symbols, and we probably interpret the manipulation of these symbols as depicting love, or at least a positive regard. Symbols include words, both written and spoken, gestures and other forms of nonverbal communication, images and sounds and artifacts. It's really important to note that symbols are abstract, arbitrary representations of reality agreed upon, or in some cases contested, by human users. What made us call these desserts? Is it some relationship between a yummy sorbet or brownie that suggested the letters D-E-S-S-E-R-T-S? Of course not. There isn't any relationship. It's just an arbitrary word we attach to a generally gooey sweet stuff that we like to eat at the end of the main course. If we write these letters in the opposite order, we get an entirely different meaning. But, as I mentioned, symbols can be nonverbal too. The meaning of a symbol is bestowed on it by those who use it and decode it. I'm not sure if my son meant to encode that he was stressed about his first face-to-face meeting with the Easter Bunny. If you take a closer look at his face and body language, I'm betting your interpretation would be that he isn't a great fan of the Easter Bunny. But because a symbol is not intrinsically linked to the object, thought or idea it represents, it can often be open to multiple interpretations. The swastika was first used as a religious symbol and signified truth, goodness and holiness. In Nazi Germany, and even today in many other countries, it's used as a symbol of white supremacy and intolerance. I'll share a brief story about the first time my 80-year-old English auntie met my friend's dog. And by the way, I promise this is a true story. When my auntie Floss met Emma the dog, she was in raptures about how beautiful she was. She said in front of my two friends and me, "Oh, she's a lovely little bitch, isn't she? Just look at her lovely coat." My two friends and I didn't dare look at each other and choked back our giggles as we tried to keep making small talk with her. Obviously, my aunt was referring to a female dog, while that wasn't the first connotation of the word bitch to us. Sometimes the word you use may not even mean anything to the receiver of your message. That may be because of differences in vocabulary, or understanding of technical terms, or terms used in a specific field, or even generational terms. I had no idea what my college-age daughter was talking about when she said a party was lit. I thought she meant it didn't have subtle lighting. Similarly, I'm lost when she uses terms like FOMO. Forms of the manipulation of nonverbal symbols can generate different meanings. Some students in this class will view these photos of Brad and Angelina as sexy, while others may think the same as the person in the centre and think yuck when they see these photos. This approach also recognises that meaning can be assigned to unintended messages. The symbol of saggy pants began in prison as a sign of sexual availability to other inmates. I'm not so sure if the saggy pants wearers in these pictures are aware of this interpretation. So, we have instances of successful communication where symbols are encoded intentionally and decoded accurately. Miscommunication, where symbols are sent intentionally but decoded inaccurately. Those of you who've seen My Big Fat Greek Wedding will remember Tula's aunt's response when Tula told her that her boyfriend was vegetarian. She said, What do you mean, he don't eat no meat? That's okay, I'll make you some lamb. Accidental communication, where messages are sent without intent but decoded accurately. And finally, attempted communication, where a message is sent intentionally but just isn't received. The third definitional theme is that of communication as a transactional process, or a process of transactions between people that all parties involved share responsibility for. Communication scholars realize that communication is just not a linear process, and that the decoder is a part of the communication process too. Merriam-Webster defines a transaction as a communicative action or activity involving two parties or things that reciprocally affect or influence each other. As Julia Wood says, the transactional nature of interpersonal communication implies that communicators share responsibility for its effectiveness. People often say, "You didn't express yourself clearly," or "You misunderstood me," as if understanding rested with a single person. This theme proposes that one person cannot make communication successful, nor is one person totally responsible for problems. So let's explore this more. A receiver decodes the message and offers some sort of feedback during and after the decoding of the message. Feedback could be one or more of the following: a spoken word, voice intonation, for example a raised voice if the receiver is angry, or other nonverbal means, such as a shrug, eye roll, smile. But the key is their response, made to varying degrees, shape the next message encoded and sent from the sender. So the receiver plays a role in the creation of meaning of the communication episode as he or she decodes the message, and while the receiver is decoding the message, he or she will continuously send feedback which may shape the next message. Back to the definition of transaction. There's a nuance here that will be explored further in this class. Communication offers a way for things like leadership, culture, love, and virtually everything else to be transacted. So a comprehensive definition of communication should include that it is a process whereby information is transferred, meaning is developed, shared, and in some instances contested, and that it involves one or more parties engaged in various transactions. I like this general definition of communication. Take a few minutes to look at it. In this class, we'll talk much more about reality and notions of a shared culture later. Okay, let's change gears again and move on to the next item on our agenda. According to communication scholars, communication has two levels of meaning, the content and the relational levels. When we communicate on both levels. The content level of meaning is the literal or informational message. So let's rewind this image to 30 seconds ago when Kim and Kanye were in the grocery store and they got their bags. Kanye said, "I'll carry the groceries, Kim." The literal message he was conveying in the content level of meaning is that he will lift up and transport the 3 bags. The relational level of meaning expresses how interactional partners perceive their relationship and how they feel about each other. So the relational level of meaning of this communication episode may be that Kanye is happy with the relationship and likes Kim and feels protective of her. The groceries are heavy and he knows Kim hasn't quite been herself since she was robbed at gunpoint in Paris, so his offer to carry the groceries may be read as a gesture of husbandly support. However, if there's bad feelings between the couple and Kanye feels like he has to do all the grunt work in the relationship, he might have said, "I'll carry the bags," in a tone that implies Kim would never think of lifting a finger to do physical work because she is the epitome of just floating around looking cute. Okay, moving right along. Let's move on to the third item on our agenda. Let's look at the three forms of communication: verbal communication, paralang, and non-verbal communication. Verbal communication should really be called word communication because it entails the use of words in delivering the intended message. The words can be spoken or written. Later on in this course, we'll look at how both spoken and written words transact organisational culture. Non-majors may be asking, what the heck is paralang? Paralang is the way something is said. This includes voice quality. Think Morgan Freeman. It includes such things as intonation, pitch, stress, emotion, tone, and style of speaking. Again, we'll explore this in more detail as we start to unpack communication episodes that transact organisational culture. Non-verbal communication is the sending or receiving of wordless messages, such as facial expressions, gestures, body language, posture, smell, clothing, or even artifacts such as the type of watch we wear. These messages can reinforce verbal communication, they can contradict it, but they can also convey thoughts and feelings on their own, such as with the thumbs up sign. It also includes visual communication, such as the size of a desk, an office layout, a company logo, visuals in a work setting such as photos on a desk, art on the wall. We'll go into this in much more detail later on in the course. Communication scholars differ in exactly what portion of a message is transmitted through the three forms we've just examined, and of course it varies from situation to situation and the various forms of noise surrounding the message. But generally, it's believed that 7 to 10% of a message is transmitted through words, 38 to 40% by paralang, and 55 to 60% through non-verbal means. Okay, a final change of gears before we move on to our last agenda item. With regard to personality and communication, I've asked you to do the 16 personalities self-awareness inventory. The answers that you give will suggest that you fall into one of 16 personality types. It will give you a brief overview about 5 traits: the mind, or how you interact with your environment, how you direct your energy, how you make decisions and cope with emotions, your approach to work, planning and decision making, and the level of confidence you have in abilities and decisions that you make. The inventory also offers a section on your type's strengths and weaknesses, your type in romantic relationships, friendships, parenthood, career paths, and workplace habits. I think you'll find it really interesting. After completing the inventory and reading these sections, I want you to write a discussion post about how you think your personality affects the way you communicate in different situations. Towards the end of this class, I'll have you look at the post again, and you will write a response to your own post and say if you still agree with it, or if you would amend or change it in any way. That's all for now. I hope you've enjoyed this first step on our exploration of communication and organisational culture. Have a great week.
l'americano. Papa l'americano.